Welcome to Knife Thoughts. This video is going to be on this knife, and this is the Civivi Elementum Button Lock 2 with the new Ultem scales. So this is a new version of the Elementum, and the Elementum is an EDC classic. It's something that is really highly and commonly recommended. I've done videos on the original Elementum, which is a liner lock flipper, and I also have done a video on the new button lock version, the Elementum Button Lock 2. And it's 2 because there was another button lock version of the Elementum, but it was a little bigger and it didn't have the flipper. It was only the button lock for opening and closing it. So this is the second version of the Elementum button lock, and this is a new version with the Ultem scales. And if you follow the knife community, market, whatever, like I do, you probably are familiar at least with the idea or seeing Ultem. It's something that has become very popular recently. It's actually not a super new material. It's a synthetic, it's a plastic that has good properties with resistance to chemicals and heat and cold and things like that, but it actually has been around for a while, and it's just that the knife industry is picking it up more recently. But I actually have only ever had one other knife in Ultem, which is this Jack Wolf Knives Pioneer Jack, and you can see that this has a plain kind of polished Ultem on it, and also that it has full liners underneath it. And that's something that I think is really interesting about this Civivi, is that this has a machined Ultem. So you can see it has this kind of lined pattern here, and it has liners underneath that have a good amount of machining to take a little bit of the weight away. And then also with the Ultem being nearly see-through, you can actually kind of see through it there. And I think that that's really cool. I actually reached out to Civivi a while back, and I'm sure that they had been working on these for a long time before I reached out. But I saw on Reddit someone had made their own Ultem scales for the Elementum, and I reached out and said, hey, I think this person has a good idea. If you make the Elementum with Ultem scales, and actually I said, and with a MagnaCut blade, it would be about the ultimate in trendy EDC knives on the market right now. They actually said, and I had heard this previously, that MagnaCut, they are only selling it to US manufacturers right now. So Chinese companies aren't really able to get MagnaCut, but they are able to get Ultem. So they did make this Elementum in Ultem. Kind of a little bit of a tongue twister there. And then they also made the Praxis, and I believe the mini Praxis, but definitely the Praxis in Ultem. So really cool to see that. I think that it really does look great with those relieved liners, and the Praxis has that also, I know. And actually the Praxis, I really like this original version of the Elementum that I have, that Civivi sent with Knife Thoughts on it there. And I don't currently have a Praxis, so I might have to pick one of those up in Ultem, because I think it does look really cool. But as usual with Civivi knives, this is made super well. I think, I said this in a video I made recently about a Civivi knife, is that they're just so consistent. Consistent in kind of like a similar way to Victorinox. When you buy a Victorinox, you know that you're going to be getting a well-made knife. They're very, very similar. They feel the same. And I think that that's really true for Civivi also. I've had very few Civivis with any issues. They almost all come with really nice action. You can see that this is drop closed, flips really nicely. They've gotten their button locks down really well also. One of the first button locks I had from Civivi, which Honestly, I'm forgetting now which model it was, but didn't have quite as snappy as a detent as they do now, but they do a really good job of it. Easy to flip, nice sound, and you can just press the button and it'll drop there, and came nicely centered. No blade play, even when unlocked, there's no side to side and there's no forward and back. And another thing that they do a really great job and consistent job of is their grind. So I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but it's ground nice and thin. I'll show you it in comparison to my other Elementum. And I would say that this button lock 2 Elementum looks, and I don't use calipers, some channels do that. You can check those channels out if you're interested in that, but I don't really measure behind the edge or anything like that. But just from the looks, hopefully you can see that, it does look like the newer version is a little bit more thinly ground, and the original version, cuts great. So I think that they do a really great job of their grinds also, and they're really consistent with it. This thing, I've really only used this for very light duty stuff, opening a few boxes, a little bit of food prep, cutting stuff into baby bite size, but it cuts really well. It seems to have come with a nice edge, and that's to be expected from Civivi. They really do a good job. I think that like the, again, original, this could be visually improved. I'm going to show you another example by their titanium clip. So this is a Scut knife, the Scut Serene, but I think that this version of the Elementum with the Ultem would look really nice with that plain clip there. And then they do have a version of this with a black blade and black liners, and so if you went with that, you could get the black version of the clip. Those clips are like $12 or $13 on Amazon, I think, and I think that they really up the aesthetic of the knives, and sometimes even the ergonomics. The ergonomics feel good on this. This Ultem is kind of like a buttery feel to it. It's somewhat rounded on the edges there, and the texturing feels good. It's not super grippy. It's not like Peel Ply G10 or something, but you get a little bit of grip from it, and it feels good in the hand. I've got wide hands. The Elementum's a little smaller than I typically carry for a modern knife, but it still feels good in my hand because of this nice simple handle shape. If you watch my videos a lot, that I think that a simple handle makes for an ergonomic handle, and that's certainly true here. But sometimes that clip does feel better than the normal clip that comes with Civivi knives. So I think it's a nice upgrade, especially because these aren't super expensive knives. With the Ultem, they're a little bit more expensive than some of the other options, but it's still a budget knife. It's still going to be under $100. Should be under, I think, under 85 total with the clip, but definitely it's going to be under 100. I'll have to look again at the prices of the knife and the clip, but you can have a pretty snazzy looking package without spending too much money, especially with that upgraded clip. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention about this knife that I think is really cool is that you can actually see the spring for the button lock. So you can kind of see how the button lock works. There's the button, and then a plunger and a coil spring there. I'm not sure if that's called a coil spring, but that's what I'm going to call it. And when you press this, you can see it's depressing that spring, and that's why it pops back out when it has space to. So I think that's pretty cool too. If you like the mechanisms of knives, you get to see that a little better on this Ultem than on other handle materials. So I have enjoyed getting to check out this knife. Thanks to Civivi for sending it along, as always. I think that they do a great job of their knives, and I always appreciate getting to check them out. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Leave any comments you have. Subscribe to the channel, click the bell, and select all so you know when I post new videos. Check out my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife related topics. I do have other Civivi videos coming, and articles and things like that. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.